And welcome back. Previously, we went ahead and created a very cool animation where we had letters fall down individually. However, we haven't done anything that would allow us to, for example, have these letters rotate, which is another cool effect that we can do. Now, there are two ways we can explore this. We can take this animation and we could add these individual effects to these letters, or we can create an entirely new animation where we can go ahead and just have those individual letters rotate. Both ways are doable because you can combine different types of animations. So if I wanted to have these letters rotate or have different effects as they come down, I can do that, or I can create a new message that can effectively do the same thing. So for today's purpose, let's go ahead and assume that we're going to do this from a fresh canvas. So I went ahead and created a new canvas here with a background, and I went ahead and inserted letters. And you can see I've set this up as a 30 frames here. So this is a 1 second animation that we're potentially looking at. So it's going to be pretty quick. And this is going to be very similar to some of the things that we've seen before. Again, we can combine this with our rotating text. It's not a big deal because all we would do is that whatever we do here today, we would simply just add that into our rotating text that we've done here with the Happy New Year. So how can we rotate these individual letters so that we can get them to do different things such as maybe come in at an angle, maybe spin. We can do these different things all with transform. All right, so there's a couple different things that we're going to show here today. So, of course, we are already familiar with the ability for us to bring letters in from off screen. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to zoom this out just a little bit here. And let's start first with our letter S. And let's say we want that one to come in from over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set this up with the motion tween. In fact, let's go ahead and do that for every one of our layers here. So that way this is all set up. And we're going to go back to our first frame. Let's go ahead and click on that S. And I'm just going to go ahead and position him so that way he is just off screen here because I want him to come into his final point there. And what I want him to do is I want that again to come into about right here. So it has that nice spacing and positional. So I could make sure that this is right here. But again, we want it so that when this S is starting here, we want that to be off screen. And then at frame 30, we'll just bring that in. And you can see we have our motion path right here. We, of course, could bend this if we wanted to follow maybe more of a curve because you can see we have that curving option here. But there are other things that we can do with this. Now, we already saw how we can ease that in. And, of course, this will make that letter just kind of ease in. This is still a falling animation. That's what we're familiar with. But there is more that we can do with it. In fact, what I can do, for example, if I wanted this to rotate, I have the ability to do that here for these different pieces. If I right click on this frame here, you can see that we have a bunch of different options here. But most specifically, we want to click on this S, where is the transform option. And this is where we really kind of get into our meat and potatoes. So the first thing we're going to look at is, let's say I wanted to flip this S so that way it was flipping vertical. And of course, that's going to make it coming upside down. And so if I wanted that to flip, you can see how I could get that to flip. Of course, it's not ending up in the final position that I want, so I'm just going to undo. And what I maybe want to do is about halfway through, that's where I'm going to want to set up that positional keyframe. So when it gets to the halfway mark, I'm going to say, hey, I want that transform and want to flip that vertically so it's upside down. But then when it gets to the end, I'm going to go ahead and transform that again with another flip vertical so that when I play this animation, you can see how that S is now rotating over top of itself. Let's go ahead and do the same thing now, but with our letter E. So we're going to take our first frame and we're going to actually drag that one out over this way so it comes in from the right. And we're going to go to frame 30. Let's drag that one back in. Again, we get our motion path right here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to set it up so this can rotate as I come in. However, I'm going to approach this one a little differently. I can right click and do a transform, and you can see we have the options for rotate in here. So for example, if I go to scale and rotate, you can see that we have the options right here that will scale and rotate this. So for example, if I wanted this E to come in a different size, I can do that. Or if I wanted to rotate so many degrees, I can do that as well. Or the other option is if I come over here and transform and I hit rotate and skew, you can see that we have the handles here now, where we can physically come in and rotate this as well, which is a pretty cool thing because we can manually have control over what kind of rotations we want. Now, the one disadvantage with manual rotation is it can be a little messy. If we go to the Frame tab up here under Properties though, you'll notice in our tweening window we have this option right here called Rotate. And that allows us to rotate something clockwise or counterclockwise. So let's just go ahead and do clockwise. And we can choose how many rotations we want that to do. So for example, you can see right now it's set to 1. If I were just to go ahead and view that as one single rotation, you can see that it will rotate that letter one single rotation. And that's pretty cool. If I wanted that to do more than that, so let's say for example I wanted this to do 2 rotations, if I were to play that, you will see that it spins faster. And so it's just all how you want to set that up. So it's a nice quick and easy way for us to be able to add rotating letters in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of work. Now we do have other options that we can do with this. So for example, let's say we wanted to ease something in. You can see we have the ease option here. So if I wanted this to come in a lot quicker, I can adjust this ease, or I could also adjust it so it comes in slower. Remember, it all depends if you want to ease in or ease out. That's all going to depend on how you want that animation. Now, let's look at our other letters here. So I have P, and I have C, and I have A. There's one other thing I'm going to show you real quick, which is I'm going to show you how to do a fade, which is using our alpha. And let's go ahead and do that now, though, with our A, because we're going to go ahead and I'll let you go ahead and apply your own animations here for P and C. But let's go ahead and show you how to do it for A, and then you can choose what you want to do for the other 2 letters. So for the letter A, what I want to do with that one is I actually want to set it up so that way when this is applied, it's going to change the alpha value, so that way this effectively comes into focus when we are running. Now the key here with this one is that I cannot do alpha with a letter. If you look at all my symbols here, for example, you will see that there's nothing here for frame, dock, object that controls alpha. So what we need to do is actually take A and convert this into a symbol. So let's just right click, convert to symbol. Keeping it as graphic is fine. And we will of course now have a lot more options that are unique to us. All right, you can see we still have tweening and stuff like that. And we have all these other document settings that we can work with. But what we want to do is be able to set the alpha value. And if you remember, alpha value is right here under color effects. So if I click down, you can see we have alpha. And I want this so when this is done, it's at 100%. But when we start, I want that A to maybe be at 0%. So I'm going to grab that slider and drag that maybe down to 0. And when I press play, you can see how that A will now fade in. So it can make for some pretty cool effects. Now the other thing I want to challenge you with for your P and your C that I'm going to go ahead and pause on, I want you to go ahead and choose your own effects. But what I want you to do is also to do some different transformations that I haven't shown you. So for example, maybe you want to scale that. All right, so challenge you with one of these to be a scaling and maybe do another fade effect. However you want to set up, that's up to you. But that's going to wrap up what I have to show you. And that should give you some really cool tricks that you can now do with letters that can add a whole nother level.